I am now joined by the White House's John Kirby. John, we just learned a little bit of something there from...
I did. I picked up a little Ukrainian.
Ukrainian, yes. You can use that in your next briefing. So President Zelensky said they want more air defenses from the United States.
Indeed.
Is the Biden administration going to give them what they need?
We are going to continue to provide them air defense, John. And yes, when the president spoke with President Zelensky, he reaffirmed that we will continue to look for advanced air defense systems that we can provide them.
Tell me what the Germans just gave them, which is apparently brand spanking new air defenses.
It is. It's I believe, a short to medium range air defense system, but it's a significant contribution by Germany. And Germany has really stepped up in recent weeks and months in terms of lethal weaponry, the kinds of gear that will allow them to actually go after the Russians.
Is there a time limit because of the winter that the Ukrainians can, they're making gains, but does that stop at some point because of the weather?
What I can tell you is that the weather will very soon make it much more difficult for, frankly, both sides to fight on the ground. As we get closer to the holidays, the end of the year, it gets very wet, it gets very soggy. On roads that are not paved, it's very difficult for mechanized maneuver.
Right.
I mean, and then of course just the cloud cover will make it difficult in the air. So yes, I think as we get closer to the end of the year, things are going to get tougher.
Relying on your Pentagon experience here, I want to ask about the tactical nuclear weapons the Russians may or may not use. This has been so much in the conversation. My understanding is that those kinds of tactical nuclear weapons, you can see it when they're starting to prepare them, that there's a ramp-up time. Before this invasion started, the U.S. Issued all the intelligence, or not all of it, but a lot of intelligence saying, watch what the Russians are doing, they're going to invade, was very transparent about that. Would that be the same model if the Russians do anything, even move a single person towards this unpacking of these tactical nukes to make a public case the way you did with the intelligence before the invasion?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of where we are right now, John. I mean, we've continued to do this throughout the last, now it's hard to believe, 8 months, when we see the Russians beginning to do things like the sham referenda. Yeah, we're calling that out. What I can tell you, though, definitively tonight is, and we're watching this as best we can, we have seen no indication that President Putin has made a decision, and we have seen nothing by watching his forces that they are preparing for that kind of an outcome. So we haven't seen anything that makes us want to change our deterrent posture. We're watching this really, really closely.
How confident is everybody that you're watching the right places?
We are watching it as closely as we possibly can. And look, John, I mean, this isn't something that just started in the last, few days. I mean, since he's been using this bellicose rhetoric about nuclear weapons since almost the beginning. So we've been taking this seriously from the get-go.
And the U.S. has had its eyes on Russia for quite a while now. The relationship between Russia and China, Xi Jinping said it had no limits. But it seems to have limits. No military, no economic help. Is that because China's acting in its own self-interest, or has President Biden encouraged them to behave that way?
Well, we certainly have made it very clear that we don't want to see anybody treating Russia normally. We don't want to see anybody helping Russia prosecute this war. And we've been very direct about that. I think a lot of this is certainly President Xi acting in what he believes is his own best interest and China's interest. He has not condemned the invasion, but he has publicly, just a couple of weeks ago in Kyrgyzstan, publicly rebuked Putin for the execution of this war, and that had an impact. And that was the first time that President Xi actually came out and criticized it, and it wasn't just him. The Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, also criticized Putin publicly. He's losing sympathetic ears, even the ones that were only moderately sympathetic to him. He's facing the pressure externally, and as you know, John, he's facing a lot of pressure internally in Russia.
Let's switch to Saudi Arabia. The president is considering punishing Saudi Arabia, but presidents and candidates often talk about being tough on Saudi Arabia, but there are a lot of constraints. The Saudi funds, the sovereign wealth funds invest a lot of money in the U.S. All those arms they pay for, they help against Iran, they help in other terrorist operations in the area. Isn't that just too much to really do much of anything with Saudi Arabia?
I don't think so, and I don't think the president believes that. He said it last night, there will be consequences. He's going to review, he's going to recalibrate this relationship, this bilateral relationship, and make sure, and this is the bottom line for him, make sure that that relationship is serving our national interests. And I think the decision by OPEC Plus last week made him wonder, to what degree is that bilateral relationship really serving our interests? Now, look, recalibrating the relationship reviewing it and maybe changing it going forward doesn't mean you sever it. You mentioned some areas in where there is cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Look, 70,000 Americans live there. Right. Saudi Arabia is a strategic partner. They have been helpful with respect to terrorism in the region. So, I mean, it's not about breaking ties, but it is about making sure that this relationship is best serving the American people, and the president wants to take a fulsome look at that and make sure that that as we come out of this decision-making process, however long it takes and whatever it includes, that's the bottom line for him.
But isn't from just an absolutely cold national security perspective, the things that Saudi Arabia helps the U.S. on are higher up the list than some gas prices?
There's a plethora of things, and terror is one of them. And again, we've got again Americans there. We have businesses there. I mean, so there's our own national security interests as well here. It's a complex relationship. But again, I think the president thought the decision by OPEC was short-sighted, disappointed in that. It benefits really only Russia. And as back to your earlier question, we don't think that this is the time for business as usual with Russia, for anybody to be doing anything that would help put money in Putin's pocket to allow him to continue to prosecute this war.
And I can't let you go without asking about North Korea. It seemed that the North Koreans said that all of these fireworks, these missiles they've been setting off, were to show that they could respond to a U.S. attack. Since no U.S. attack is planned, do you read that as they were showing they have this defensive capability and that's it? How do you read this most recent barrage of missiles and this comment?
It's difficult to get inside the mind of Kim Jong-un, and we don't have great visibility into their decision-making process. I would take with a huge grain of salt any rhetoric coming out of Pyongyang about what they're doing and what the motivations are. One thing is clear. With each one of these launches, whether it's successful or not, he learns. And he has the ability to improve his program, which is why we're taking so seriously and have our commitments to the South Koreans and to the Japanese in response to recent provocations. You've seen us now improve our intelligence gathering capabilities, particularly off the coast of the peninsula. And you've seen us just in the last week or so conduct exercises bilaterally with the South Koreans and with the Japanese, and work really hard at trying to improve trilateral cooperation between the three of us. Because regardless of what his intentions are, and we still want to sit down without preconditions. We're still committed to a diplomatic path here. He's shown no interest in that. So in short of that, we got to make sure that we're ready, that our defensive capabilities are as sharp and as capable as they possibly can be. Because as our troops on the peninsula say, they have to be ready to fight tonight.
All right, John Kirby, thank you so much for being with us.
You betcha.
Appreciate it.